Hey everyone, this is GosuDad and welcome back once again to this TVT on Antiga Shipyard between myself and we'll refer to my opponent as Alien, keeping the cast family friendly here. So now you may be asking, why are we revisiting this game once again? And the answer to that is that Alien found my videos online on YouTube and asked a very specific question. His question was, at what point, how did I lose this game? You know, he was very much ahead at some point earlier on in the game. We're going to speed up this time, try to keep this cache short. And so his question is, how did he lose this game? So we're going to be looking at a couple of choice encounters in this game. We'll be looking at economy and production, knowledge, army placement, a little bit of micro. But I think the real key here is a little bit of it is economy and production. Mainly in the realm of how I was able to catch up from being at a serious economy disadvantage at a point in the game that is coming up as we speed through on faster ×4 speed. But I think the real turning point was an issue of army placement, as well as a little bit of the knowledge factor as well. So the first couple of tiers of Buddha's SC2 pyramid, economy and production. And then after that, I believe, is knowledge, where you are using your knowledge of the game to affect, using your knowledge of the game while you're playing. So let's take a look at this very first encounter here between the two players. We have Alien coming in with 11 Marines, and my defending force of 7 Marines and a GosuDad. Sorry, an Automaton 2000. So if we just take a quick look at the unit supply tab, the units tab, we can see that he's at 11 Marines to 7. On the SCV count, he's actually behind by 1 SCV. If we look at the units killed count, we are tied 1-1, each of us killing an SCV. So we will pull down the speed back to faster and hit play. And watch how this turns out, turning on the hit point tabs. Now, you see here coming up the ramp, we'll look at a quick just point about micro. Is he focusing firing on Marines? It looks like he's doing that. That's an excellent choice by him. He does have a couple of Marines back here doing nothing. They could be shooting something. At this point, he stops focus firing, and the Marines are spreading their damage out between these two supply depots. So he probably could have taken out this supply depot had he focused on it completely. At this point, my SCVs are coming out to attack, trying to buy time for this tank to come out, but in the meantime, he's killing a whole bunch of SCVs. I think only 2 SCVs survived from this encounter. So taking a quick pause there, going to the units killed tab. So the question was, in this encounter, did he come out ahead in economy? And I think the answer is yes. So after this first encounter, he's ahead by quite a bit. He was able to kill 21 units compared to my 12. So as far in a mirror matchup, you know, in TVT it's a mirror matchup. Both of us have exactly the same starting pieces and exactly the same opportunities. And so at this point in the game, we can say that he has a strong advantage. He's used up more of my money, 21 units worth, than I have. If we look at another excellent tab here on the replay menu, is a units lost tab, which records the amount of resources that you've lost. Like, so I've lost 21 units, but how many resources is that? And if you look here, you can see that I've lost quite a bit more, about 450 resources more than he has in that exchange. So at this point, we established that he is far and ahead of myself in the economy wise. Now army wise, checking out the army supply tab, I'm actually ahead because I have these high cost units, a Banshee here, a Banshee on the way, and this tank. Now he's going to make a minor mistake here. These 3 Marines are still rallied to the front of my base, so they will die without any reason there. This tank is just going to kill them and be the end of that. So now the question is, he knows that he's ahead. He's going ahead and expanding to this gold position. That's an excellent use of being ahead. When you're playing this economy production game, you want to maintain your economic advantage, and he's doing that. He's expanding. He's also increasing his production structure, so he can produce, I think at this point, a lot more minerals than I can. Let's just do a quick mineral count. So off of 1 starport, 1 factory, building 1 tank, and 1 Banshee, that's 300 minerals, plus 2 Marines, about 2 Marines a minute coming out of here. That would be 400 minerals plus 150 minerals coming out of my command center about 3 SCVs per minute. So now you're talking 550 minerals of production, and he has, this basically counts as 2 barracks, so we can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If he was just making Marines, that's 600 minerals a minute, plus his a siege tank coming out of here. That's another 150, so he's at 750, plus 150 from this orbital command. Now he's at 900, plus this command center coming out. Now he's at over 1,000. Now with 2 mineral lines, he should be able to handle that just fine. Checking on the income counter, we can see that he's actually behind in minerals. So he has far more production at this point than he has mineral income, and that, I would say, is probably one of the things that he's going to be limited by here. Now these Banshees are coming in. Now one of the questions he asked was, would turrets have saved him the game? And I think here's a case where it's quite possible it would have, and that would fall under the knowledge category of SC2 of Buddha's SC2 pyramid. So I'm trying to keep the game rolling here, trying to keep the time running. So these Banshees are going to kill. I think there was only 1 worker killed before the Banshees came. So let's just kind of speed them through their nice little run around. They get killed off by the Marines. And so I think this is maybe a good point here, is that he was actually able to hold off the Banshees with purely Marines. They only killed 7 workers, but if we look at the supply tab, that actually puts his worker count very similar to mine. But he does have 2 expansions. Now, if you've been keeping an eye on this production tab over here, you'll see that he hasn't kept up with the the training of workers at a continuous rate from both command centers. You can see he's building up on the army, he's building tech, and just now he's starting to build workers. Now, there's no reason why you should not be continuously building workers unless you're supply blocked, which he is not. So at this point in the game, we're just building up our armies, and he should be able to produce quite a bit more than I can. So checking on the army supply, he should continually be ahead on army supply and worker supply to a severe degree. You can speed along this really quick. So at this point we're just building, and I'll do a quick pause. Okay, he's getting ready to move out. So now's a good chance to look at that unit count and see where we are. So despite having more production structures and despite having more income, he's still only slightly ahead of me in army supply. And if you look at the difference in the kind of army that is supplied here, you can see that 8 of his supply, because medevacs are 2 supply each, 8 of his supply are not attacking units. So these medevacs can help heal the Marines as they fight, but as far as that first initial engagement when things are fighting each other, this supply doesn't really count. And so really his army supply is 30 to 31, so our armies are actually similar. So in the amount of time that he had from that first attack till now, because of these Banshees, because of these 3 tanks, I've been able to equal the army supply here. So our armies are actually fairly similar, and to a certain extent he is at a disadvantage because these Banshees can only be attacked by the Marines, and he does have a lot of Marines though. But if he's not careful, these tanks can completely negate the Marines if they siege up. So while they're on the move, it's not a problem. We're going to turn on the speed again, faster times 4. So he does a scan, that's very good, making sure that I don't have missile turrets to shoot down his units coming in for this drop, which is a very good idea. He comes in near these protective smoke rings, and that's very good as well. Now here's an interesting point, just pause real quick. Some might say, was it a game ender that he didn't bring these Marines, walk them under the orbital command first, so that as the orbital passes over them, they were able to kill it? In this particular case, very particular situation, I was at this point going for Warcraft 3 mode. I am microing to win. I'm not producing anything really at this point. And so I don't think that him not killing off the production structures was important. Now, admittedly, had he killed all my buildings, he would have won the game. Strictly through the game victory conditions, but I don't think that was the particular key moment to this game, me being able to catch up. So at this point, we're just doing a base trade. He does this awesome move of lifting off all of his barracks all at once. I don't know if he had those hotkeyed together. Now at this point, there's a couple of buildings he didn't save, which is kind of too bad. Oh, and I kind of missed. Ooh, I kind of missed this point here. There were 5 medevacs. All the medevacs were basically, I think they may have been hotkeyed to the Army, and so they were told to attack the orbital command and went along with it. So he basically lost 10 supply, fully charged up medevacs for no reason, and so that I would call that kind of a miscontrol of the Army. But again, I don't think that was a significant difference here. Looking at that unit tab that I've accidentally kept up this whole time, you can see that tank-wise, very similar, 2 to 3. He has a lot more Marines. But I've got these 5 Banshees plus this Hellion, but mainly the Banshees, and I'm using my SCVs as an attacking force. But if you look at the supply count, we're still pretty even. If you take out the 2 medevacs, that 4 supply, that puts them 27 supply to 34. We're still fairly close. The Marines, all of them together, can take out the Banshees fairly well. I don't think any of us have any sort of upgrades here. Let's see if I can find some. There's some Marines here I can click on. So I think we're still, yeah, Marines are not upgraded, and I don't believe his Marines are upgraded either. So we're basically, I still think at this point, on even footing, except that he is with these 4 barracks down here, plus these buildings up here. He's got a lot more production than I do. Now, he is severely supply blocked, so this production means nothing until he can unsupply block himself. The other thing that's interesting is that he has a lot of gas banked up here, but he has 4 harvesters on this gas geyser and 5 here. So in addition to having 3 extra workers just basically sitting around because he has too many on each geyser, he could put all of these on the rich minerals and catch up in the mineral game and be able to use all those barracks to produce a lot more units than I have. Now, he'll have only a brief window before I come and attack, so that production level, again, I would say, although very crucial, especially in the long game, at this point in the long game, he will win. But in the short game, it's really going to come down to how he uses these units. So don't forget, as we come into the... Okay, so now we're really going to slow down this time. This, I think, is the crucial point. Some missile turrets up here to prevent the loss of those SCVs. That was very important. That could have pruned this number down a little bit. It would have also helped defend in that last push if they would have had missile turrets back at his base at the gold expansion. But this point right here, this army control, I think is the key tipping point in this game. At this point, we're still basically even on army supply. He's actually ahead on worker supply, so he is ahead at this point, but this is, I think this is really the key right here. So these siege tanks are going to siege up, and once again, just for fun, oh, we caught it right as that siege tank shot. We can take a look at their attack. So these, hold on, excuse me. So if you look at their damage, these shot cannons do 35 damage to light, 50 damage to armor. With both of these siege tanks here, you can just take a look at the range here. His units are within the range of the siege tanks, so you're talking 70 damage to the light units. So you can see here he went down from 45 down to 10 in a single hit. And this, it looks like this Marauder didn't get as much damage. I wonder, it could be that the damage is kind of distributed out the further away it is from the epicenter. But the point is that these tanks can basically take out the infantry if they're too close. So once he's done this drop, now he may not know that my tanks are sieged up or not sieged up. They were not originally sieged up when he dropped. But as these Marines and this Marauder, but these Marines in particular are the bulk of his army. He needs to keep them alive. So at this, and they are his defense against these Banshees. So I think this is really that crucial moment. As soon as he gets that first hit, if he would have taken the group and ran them away, he would have maintained his army equivalency with me, and his production would have pushed him over into the win. Or if he would have moved his units up here beneath the protection of this missile turret, he could have probably pushed back on these Banshees and whatever ground forces I had that were mobile. Don't forget, I only have like 8 Marines. So his 2 tanks sieged up can completely take out my Marines, and he can basically win the game at this point. So this is that crucial point. Now, unfortunately, he chose to go into the tanks, and I mean, I suppose if he was really watching, he could have seen from my previous battle that I had 3 siege tanks, and knowing that I have siege, and so that's just I think that was just the mistake here. All these Marines are just going to get evaporated by the tanks. The Banshees don't help either, but it's really the tanks here. At this point, almost all 3 of the tanks are within range of the units. We'll keep selection on him, and we can see how far they move into range. Oh, yeah, see, look at that. That's almost every single unit is within the range of all 3 tanks. So that's just a tremendous amount of damage that, I mean, no ground army can withstand that. Now, it's after this point, I'll just speed that up. This is kind of painful to watch even. Checking out that army supply tab, that is where I'm ahead by 30. And since I push out fairly quickly after this, he is not able to capitalize on that. Now, checking on the production tab, we can just rewind just a little bit and see what he's been building while this battle has been going on, while the drop was on its way. And we can see that he hasn't been building out of his production structures, which he has a ton of production. And I mean, admittedly, he doesn't have a whole lot of supply, but he could be building a lot. As we go back in time, we're seeing, yeah, there's not a lot of building here, even though he's not supply blocked. So from this point on, fairly quickly, see, he's not supply blocked. He's not building out of his buildings, even though they're ready to go, even though he has supply. So I mean, I suppose, yeah, on the production side of things, his economy is just perfectly fine, although he could be, you know, going for strictly minerals at this point. He's got plenty of gas. I think that this first engagement here is what really took him from being on par with me or ahead to being behind. And at this point, I don't think he's got enough time, even with all the production structures. Now, had he moved these back to his expansion, maybe he would have enough to hold off this attack, especially since he can pump out 2 tanks at a time. You'll be seeing these 2 tanks. Let's take out that army supply pad. You'll be seeing these 2 tanks coming out. Now, remember, just like his army coming into my army, into 3 siege tanks was at a tremendous disadvantage for him. At this point, he could siege up these 2 tanks and hold off quite a bit of an attack from myself. I only have 3 tanks, only 6 Marines now, a good set of SCVs, but really not that many. His 2 siege tanks, if he's able to hold me off with some other units to keep them away from the siege tanks, these 2 siege tanks sieged up could have held off this final push. So even after that kind of horrendous army control blunder there, I think he could have, if he would have pulled back just a little bit, I think he could have held off this second wave, or this final attack, and won the game as well. So I think this is a case, although there are some production issues, I think this is a case of army mismanagement in the heat of battle, and somewhere in there, you know, perhaps not, not sure that it's necessarily fair to say, oh, well, you know, you saw what your opponent had, you should be prepared for anything. I really think that, you know, facing an opponent who's, you know, kind of that, you know, wounded, cornered weasel or whatever, is going to attack it, you know, with everything until you're dead, is a surprise. A lot of people down in Bronze League like to sit back, build big bases and that type of thing. So finding an opponent that's willing to take everything they have in their base and come and attack you relentlessly until you're gone is a bit of a surprise. So I think in this case, again, I think it really was that engagement over here where his full force just really walked into 3 tanks. The Banshees were bad too, but I think it was that point there that really tipped the game full into my favor. Up until that point, I was actually just barely keeping up, or not even keeping up. I was just behind. So yeah, good game for Alien, and hopefully that answers his question about, you know, where he was ahead in that game and where, you know, where I came back. True, I do think some turrets would have helped, but I really think it was just that final battle back in his old base that really kind of sealed the deal there, sealed the deal in the wrong direction for him. So yeah, there you go. Thanks for all the feedback on YouTube, and you can tell from this cast that if you comment, I might, you know, cast in response to that. I've done that a couple of times. So that's great. Hopefully this cast wasn't too long, and it probably will be longer than I intended to. But this is GosuDad signing out, and we'll see you guys next time.